And now back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
Hello and welcome back to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for staying tuned to the second hour of the show. Don't forget, Just Energy Radio can be heard live on the Inception Radio Network, or you can download the Inception Radio Network app for your smartphone and listen to the show live in your car, at work, while you're working, obviously, or wherever you are. You can also check out the show on the Just Energy Radio webpage where we have all of our archives, or you can go and check out our YouTube channel, which is Just Energy Radio. Don't forget to sign up for our weekly newsletter where you can be kept informed of the wonderful programming we have on the show, or like Just Energy Radio on Facebook, because we also post who the upcoming guests are each week. And one last announcement before we get Rabbi Wayne Dosick on the air. If you weren't listening to the beginning of the show, one of the things I announced was that myself and Brian Forrester, who's been on Ancient Aliens a number of times and who's been a regular guest on Just Energy Radio, we're teaming up together and putting together what's called the Science and Spirituality Tour, where we're going to Peru and you get to touch all the different monuments and measure them and interact with them. But we're also making it be a little woo-woo, where everyone is going to have the opportunity to experience doing some remote viewing and tapping into the energy on energetic levels. And we're going to check for vortexes and hope we can connect with some of the ancestral spirits that are in some of these ancient locations. So for more information about that, go to soulhealer.com, and we made a big banner on the top of the webpage. Click on it. It'll take you to where all the information is about the trip. And join us in Peru. It's scheduled for June 1st through June 12th, and it is going to be so much fun. Oh, I can't even wait. Oop. Anyway, let me tell you a little bit about Rabbi Wayne, and we'll get him on the air. Rabbi Wayne Dosick is an educator, writer, spiritual guide, and healer who teaches and counsels about faith and spirit, ethical values, life transformations, and evolving human consciousness. He is the founder of and spiritual leader of the Elijah Minyan and adjunct professor at the University of San Diego, and the award-winning author of 8 books, including the highly acclaimed and much beloved Golden Rules, the 10 ethical values parents need to teach their children. The book we're going to be talking about today is Empowering Your Indigo Child, and his last book was The Real Name of God, which was a very interesting conversation, and you can check that out on our archives. So please welcome to Just Energy Radio from www.soulbysoul.com, Rabbi Wayne Dosick. Hey, Rabbi, how are you?
Hi, Dr. Rita. How are you? What a great pleasure to be back with you.
Well, you're like my favorite Rebbe.
Oh, you're so sweet. And the good news is I'm going to see you next week.
I know.
We're going to get to meet in person because I will be at the Dallas, Texas Jewish Community Center next Wednesday, the 13th at 7 o'clock, speaking about my new book, The Real Name of God, Embracing the Full Essence of the Divine. So anybody who's in the Dallas area, please come. And I'm really, really looking forward, Dr. Rita, to meeting you.
Yay. You need to send me an email with that information. I will post it to my Dallas Facebook people.
Great. Fantastic.
Okay, so
where should I send it? Soulhealer.com?
My regular email that you have.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got it. I'll be there.
Okay. Yeah, that's going to be really fun. I mean, I really enjoyed your book, so I'm looking forward to getting, the presentation and get to meet you. And so that's next Wednesday, the 13th. So, yay.
Y'all in Dallas, come see me. So I'll say shalom, y'all. That's good.
Yeah, that. Okay. So let's kind of talk about this topic about indigo children, because actually in the 6 years I've been doing this show, we have never had a show about indigo children. And when I found out that was one of your areas, I was like, come back on. And let's talk about this. But what got you interested in that whole concept in the first place?
It's a long story, but I'll try to make it as short as possible. Back in the early 90s, my wife, Ellen Kaufman Dosick, who, as you know, is the world master practitioner and teacher of the psychospiritual therapy soulmemorydiscovery.com and the author of the bi-monthly internet publication, The Cosmic Times, she began getting in her prayers and meditations the message that children will be in more pain than ever before. The children will be in more pain than ever before. And we went through a series of all kinds of machinations, but at a certain point, I began to get that same message. And so we began to ask our spiritual guidance what they wanted us to do about this pain. And they gave us little games to play with children and their parents. We wound up calling these little games Youmees, Youmees, to help children who are in psychic, spiritual, emotional pain. Everybody who's tried to help children has done so on a rational cognitive level. That's what my book Golden Rules was about in many, many ways. But the woundings, the pain that children feel is on a spiritual and energetic level, and that's where it has to be healed. And so we were given these little games, and we tried them out with kids in the neighborhood. And the truth was that we had never heard the word indigo, nor knew anything about Indigo Children. We were just trying to help children who were in psychic pain. And at some point, somebody said to us, "Oh, you're working with the Indigo Children." We had never heard of Indigo Children. Well, it turns out that the people who are working with Indigo Children are right here, virtually in our neighborhood in Southern California, North County, San Diego. Jan Tober and Lee Carroll, who had written the first and then the second book, and Nancy Ann Tappy, now of blessed memory, who had given the Indigos their designation. And so we began to talk to them and find out what was going on. And we began to find out more and more about the Indigo Children who are identified and whom it seems that we were already helping.
Okay, I want to come back to the whole wounding thing in a little bit because I think that that's important, or it is important. But let's stick on just kind of a general concept of what is an indigo child? I mean, I heard that term for a really long time, and actually up until I read your book, it wasn't as defined as I thought. I was like, well, they're kind of psychic, But for the listeners who aren't familiar with that term or have heard it and have heard one or two little things about it, can you create a more clarified definition of what an indigo child represents?
Sure, and that's a wonderful place to start. Indigo Children, all our listeners know who they are because they are the children whom we know. There are 85% of the children who are being born these days are Indigo Children. It means that they are incredibly creative, they're energetic, they're innovative, they're smart, they're wise beyond their years, they're deep old souls. And the Indigo Children have come in order to be the paradigm shifters, to move our world from this 3D world in which we live into the 5D world. And they are the paradigm shifters. So in their magnificence and in their greatness, they are leading us. As the Bible says, the little children will lead them. We just have to listen to them and follow them. The problem is that some children are not in their magnificence, and they are in great psychic pain. They come in, that is, that they are born, with a great longing for the world that they just came from, that is the pain and the bewilderment of being separated from God, God, of course, being in the heavens where souls all originate, and us being here on Earth. And in their pain and bewilderment, they they're not comfortable here. They're not comfortable in their own skins. And so they begin to act out. And they're the children who we move from class to class. We send them to this special ed class, that special ed class. We schlep them from therapist to therapist. And when all else fails, we label them ADD and ADHD and fill them full of drugs to drug manage and drug control them. It's not the children's fault. We just don't understand them, and we don't understand the pain that they're in. So Ellen and I work not with the children in their magnificence, because there are plenty of people who are working with their children in their magnificence. We work with the children who are in this psychic, emotional, energetic pain and try to help them overcome this pain so that they can come into their magnificence and then be a part of the paradigm shifters.
Now, you just said 80% of all children are indigo children, but if they're giving, I'm getting a little contradiction, because if these children are acting out, then there would be 80% of the children on medication, or some actually just dealing with it better.
No. Many of the indigo children are in their magnificence already. And they're not feeling the pain, and they're not feeling the energetic separation from God and the bewilderment and the pain that is sourced in there. The first indigo children started coming in right after World War II at the rate of about 5%. And that rate has grown and grown to 80 or 85% or more. The first indigo children, count me amongst them, think Bill Clinton, think Barack Obama, think Hillary Clinton, think of all the paradigm shifters whom you know in this world. We had no clue that we were alone and lonely in this world. We just didn't seem to fit in. We didn't seem to get along or go along, and we were really, really very lonely in our aloneness. But as more and more indigo children come in, and as I say, we're up to 80 or 85% or more, then we see the children both in their magnificence and in their pain. So many of the indigos are in their magnificence. Many 15% or more children are not indigos, so they're just regular good old kids. And we see the ones who are in that psychic and emotional, energetic pain.
Okay. And so you were saying since World War II, so that means like I could be an indigo?
You could be an indigo. My guess is that you probably are.
I tell people that if they were doling out psychiatric drugs like they do now, they would have had me on so much stuff when I was a kid.
Sure. And ADD and ADHD is not a disease. If, God forbid, I break my arm, that's something that medical science can deal with. If, God forbid, I have a heart attack, that's something medical science can deal with. ADD and ADHD are not diseases. They are simply descriptives of certain behaviors. And since the parents and the teachers have such a hard time dealing with those behaviors, and doctors have no clue as to what's wrong with the kids, they try to drug manage them and drug control them. It's almost a national scandal. You know, the highest percentage of prescriptions given to an age group for Prozac in America is given to children 5 to 7 years old.
I didn't know that. That's hard to believe.
That's a national embarrassment. It's a national obscenity that we're drug managing our kids.
My feeling is, open the door, turn the TV off, and say, go outside and play. Go run up and down the block 500 times. Go ride your bike around in circles up and down the block 500 times. And then, after about 3 hours, come back in.
Well, that's true. That's absolutely true, Dr. Rita. But that creates physical exhaustion. It doesn't deal with the emotional pain. And so
Well, I understand that, but when you're just sitting in front of the TV playing Xbox all day, you're not doing anything.
Absolutely.
You're not even burning off that psychic energy.
Yeah, and just on another level, back to that cognitive level, the average parent spends 11 and a half hours less a week with his or her child than the parents of the 1960s.
Interesting. But I mean, now, I remember growing up, most families, the mom was at home. Now, I don't know really any families that the mom is at home, or there's one caregiver at home all day or even half the day. That
certainly is part of it. And that certainly is, again, one of the great sadnesses of this generation. We have two-income families because we want so many material things. And we have too many families where it's a one-parent family because usually it's the father who has abandoned the family. And all of those things play on a child's psyche and a child's being. So these little games that we have, they're for children between the ages of 7 and 17. Again, we call them the Yumis. Parents and children play them. There are 17 games because there are 17 woundings that children can experience. They all have this world names, but they have spiritual world definitions. And the best metaphor I can use is that if you have a car battery and you drain the water from the car battery, the car has no power and doesn't go. These little games are a combination of sacred words and sacred actions. Words have great, great power. Abracadabra, open sesame. If you want a cookie, you say please, and when you get one, you say thank you. There's great power in words. There's also great power in actions, in what we call sacred rituals. So if you are Catholic, you cross yourself in one particular way. The Jewish service has a Torah service that plays out in a particular way. The Japanese tea service, the cups have to be in an exact place. The pledge to the flag, the flag raising, they all have particular ways. Those are sacred rituals. So you combine sacred words with sacred rituals in these little games, and by playing them, they draw the power away from the wounding. And if the wounding doesn't have any power, it doesn't go, and the kids feel better, and then they feel more comfortable here, and they behave better.
Where does this wounding come from? That was what I wanted to ask before, but I wanted to talk about the Indigo Children first.
Yes,
is it a past life wounding? Where, if you're 5, 6, 7 years old, most people think, well, how can you be wounded?
No, well, you can get some of these woundings here, but the woundings, again, are sourced in the separation from God and the bewilderment and the pain that results. So I'll give you a perfect example. The first processes, the 17 we call them because there are 17 woundings and 17 games, are from children from 7 to 17 years old. Then I started getting calls and phone and emails from people who say, I have a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old. And the child's not yet old enough to play the game. And that's because the child's not yet ready cognitively or spiritually to take responsibility for his own behaviors. And so one woman said to me, my child said this to me, Mommy, I want to go home. Honey, you are home. No, Mommy, I want to go to my real home. This is your real home. No, Mommy, I want to go to my real home. When I was in heaven with God, before I chose you and Daddy to be my mommy and daddy, I want to go home. Now, the mother was petrified because, God forbid, how do you get a suicidal 4-year-old who doesn't want to be here? And so we went back to our guidance and we said, we have children who are from birth to age 7. This process doesn't work for them because they're too young. Can you give us another process that would work for younger children? And they gave us what we called eventually Grace Light, weaving harmony for the littlest indigos, and the parent surrogates for the child in, again, little word and action rituals, and the children begin to feel better. And then, of course, after that, people said, I'm 18, I'm 22, I'm 35, I'm 49, I'm 56, I'm 65, and I feel all these pains, I feel all these woundings, it all resonates with me. And these, of course, are the oldest indigos who came in starting after World War II, who were never healed, and they carried their woundings into adulthood. And so, again, we went back to guidance, and we said, could we have a process for the oldest indigos? And they gave us what we wound up calling the point of essence process, proclaiming the truth of who you are. Because all through our childhoods, we denied who we were. The world wasn't ready for our light. And so we put bushel baskets, metaphoric bushel baskets, over our light so that we could get along with the rest of humanity and our classmates and our teachers and our coaches. And so now we basically suppressed who we are. So now we, in this point of essence process, we make proclamations to supersede the disclaimers that we made, and adults feel better as well.
Well, that's good. I'm kind of stuck on this wounding thing. Sorry. But why would some people be, why would an indigo be wounded and a not indigo not be wounded? Because we're all experiencing that separation.
Well, different people react to different situations in every way. Let me give you some of the woundings and their spiritual definition so you get the idea, okay?
Okay.
So for example, the first one is anger, the need to defend yourself through attack against the harshness of this world experience. Now, some people don't feel the harshness of this world experience, and some people feel it tremendously. Grief is weeping at the separation between you and God. Distrust, not being able to count on any reality as certain. Anguish, the belief that you are totally alone in this world. Shame, being embarrassed in front of the whole cosmos. What's the embarrassment? The angels are still in heaven, and you are here. Loss, not being able to count on your own heart. Hatred, the experience of feeling as you don't deserve reunion with God. Resentment, the wish that the world meets your inner vision. Guilt, holding yourself responsible for the lack of perfection in this world. I felt that one a great deal. Now, I mentioned 6 or 8 of the 17 woundings. A child doesn't have them all necessarily, but I know that I always have felt guilty in my life for the lack of perfection in the world, because I always said to myself, if I weren't so short, fat, and bald, I would command more of an audience, and I could help end hunger in this world because more people would listen to me. We could collect more money. We could feed more hungry people, and the world would be better off. So that was a feeling in my own life. And when I was given this name and this definition, I resonated with it immediately.
And so I'll assume you practice your own medicine. What kind of results did you, what did you notice once you started working on clearing that?
Well, not only do I did it for myself, and my wife facilitated through it, but every time I facilitated for a child or for an adult, I'm sort of living through it as well. And I at least understand it now. I can't say that I don't want to feed every hungry person, but I understand it much more on a cognitive level instead of it eating me up on a psychic or a spiritual or an emotional level.
Okay. That makes sense. But you can have multiple woundings, I would think.
Yes. So when we start with the child, the first thing we do is what we call the illumination, which is a little diagnostic. And there's a way to find out which woundings are up for the child that day. And we do the games that correspond to those woundings. And then the child comes back a week later, and we do the others ones that weren't up the first day, so that by the end of the second session, we have played the games for all 17 woundings.
Okay. And how fast and effective are these things?
Well, with children, it's actually pretty swift and pretty dramatic. If it's going to work, it works very, very quickly. And we have we put in the book the original responses from parents who told us how incredibly these were working. With the little ones, it has to be reinforced each and every month by the parent doing this for the little ones, a little 10-minute process. Adults are different. We are thicker, we are denser. There may be other things going on for us than just the indigo woundings. So I'll give you an example that I talk about in the book. Some guy came to see me from out of state, and we did the point of essence, the adult healing. And I always give out little sort of report cards, you send back to me in a month or so, tell me how things are going. Well, this guy didn't send it back. I sent him a reminder. He didn't send it back. Okay, so he didn't send it back. So about 6 months later, I run into him at a social gathering here in town. And he's embarrassed. He says to me, I didn't send it back because it didn't do anything for me. And I like you and Ellen so much. I didn't want to embarrass you. I didn't want to tell you your process doesn't work. So I just sort of ignored it. And I said, okay, well, I said all the socially correct things. I said to him, by the way, what are you doing here again? He said, oh, didn't you hear? I said, no, what? He said, well, after I went back to my home state, I closed down my business, and I rented out my condo, and I moved here to San Diego, and I got a new job, and I rented an apartment, and I have a new girlfriend. And I looked at him and
going on here.
I looked at him and I said, and the point of essence process didn't work? And he said, it took much longer than I thought it would, but of course it must have worked because look what happened in my life.
Stuff like that just makes me laugh, actually, I'm going to say that in a different way. Many times people don't realize that when we make changes, the only place we're going to really see changes is in a reflective place. Like there's this expectation, especially with adults, where it's like, well, I did this thing and, there weren't trumpets coming out of the sky and, I didn't win the lottery that Saturday, so it didn't work. Versus looking at the direction their life is taking and look in a reflective place going, hey, look at all this stuff that's changed and is better in my life.
Right. Exactly.
Which I think is important. So that was a lesson to everybody.
Yeah. So with the kids, it can be swift and dramatic. And with the adults, it can take a while. And for some people, it doesn't work because every once in a while we do a session for somebody we think is an indigo. Turns out it's not. Or it turns out that I didn't give the instructions correctly because since it is sacred ritual and words, if I say, please start this with your right foot, and the child is supposed to start with the left foot, or if I say, please start with your right foot, and the child mistakenly starts with the left foot, that won't work. That game won't work. And so I try to check along the way. I use my pendulum. I check with guidance if we're given the right instructions. But it's possible that we don't give the right instructions. Or it's possible that the child was so oppositional that day that it didn't work or couldn't work. I've seen parents bring their kids here. And I always tell the parents to tell them they're coming to play games with Wayne. First of all, half the kids don't know what a rabbi is, so we shouldn't start confusing them. Second of all, they've seen enough doctors already, so they don't need to see one more doctor. So I tell them not to call me Rabbi Dosick, not to call me Dr. Dosick. Tell them that you're coming to play games with Wayne. So sometimes kids walk in here and they are totally resentful. One kid came in and said, I said to him, "Hi, how are you?" He said, "Horrible." I said, "Really? Why?" She, pointing to his mother, made me come. This kid was maybe, 12 or 14 at the time. And I said, "So what's so terrible?" "Well, I had to leave my computer at home." So I said, "Well, it's only a couple, 2, 3 hours." He said, "You don't understand. My soul was in that computer." So jokingly, I said, "Well, maybe you should get a laptop. Take it with you." He said to his mother, "See, Mom, he thinks I should get a laptop too." This kid was, he lives right near the water. He's afraid of the water. He goes and plays basketball. Excuse me, he's supposed to play basketball with his friends. He hates playing basketball. He's mean and nasty to his grandparents. He's having a miserable life. We played the Yumis with him. And the bottom line is this kid graduated from college, magna cum laude, got a master's degree, now has a great job, has a wonderful life. Was it all because of the indigo healing? I don't know. But when he came here, he was on a path towards self-destruction.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's got a master's degree and a terrific job.
That's wonderful. Because I think parents don't know what to do. They have these kids, they're sensitive, and if they're like hip and cool and understand what that means, they still don't feel like they have the tools to do anything about it.
Right.
So I think this gives them some tools to work with to at least help their child. Let me ask kind of a different weird question. So will these things work? So let's say your child is having a bad day. So I'm just going to open the book and let's see, what do I open it up to? All right. It didn't open up to anything. So guilt. So let's say your child, you've gone through this process, but your child is still having issues with guilt, or there's something going on and, there's this guilt thing going on. Or something else happens in their lives. So maybe the marriage splits up. That's a good example. And the child is feeling very guilty about the marriage splitting up. Can you use these tools like individually to support or clear that specific wounding in a child?
Yes. Look, the playing the 17, you play all 17 games, and those woundings are then healed. But it's like, if I break my arm, doesn't mean that I can't break it again, right? And so there can be other woundings that take place later, and you can play some or all of the games later. By the way, so that's one of the reasons that it's so interesting that you use that particular example, because sometimes the playing of the 17 doesn't work because a child is what we call a stakeholder. What does it mean to be a stakeholder? It means that mom and dad fight all the time, and if I get better, they won't have to spend so much time on me, and they'll fight and maybe they'll get divorced. So the kid doesn't get better. Or I act out in school so much so that and therefore my teacher doesn't see that my friend Tommy doesn't understand the reading material. And if I get better and the teacher doesn't have to spend so much time on me, then she'll begin to pick on Tommy because he doesn't know his work. A child is a stakeholder, not consciously, but unconsciously. A child is a stakeholder, and the healings may not work because the child doesn't really want to be healed for those reasons.
Well, what if the child is kind of an attention whore, even if it's negative attention? Would that run into a problem also? Sure,
that can be a problem as well. So usually being an attention, what did you call it, attention hog? Usually that's taken care of in the session, because we are paying very, very close attention to that child for that hour and a half, however long the session takes. And the child and the parent are interacting. And the truth be told, and I don't know because I'm not sure about this, so I can't say one way or the other, but for a parent to spend an hour and a half in intimate play with the child, that can have an effect just by itself. So there are all kinds of things that can play on this also.
Okay.
You're so compliant.
Well,
Okay.
Well, something like this, there are all
talking-
these choices, and I'm like, okay, well, and I just take stuff like this, and then I start mixing it around and going, well, but if I did this with it, and then change this over here, and then did this, what would the outcome be?
Yeah, well, last time, Dr. Rita, when we talked, and I was talking about my discovery of the real name of God, while you were somewhat skeptical at the beginning, you got it. I mean, you understood, and I hope everybody in the Dallas area comes and hears me talk next week at the JCC. Here you sound incredibly skeptical, and it doesn't feel as if you're getting it quite the way you got the name of God.
Well,
you can be skeptical if you want. Just tell me.
I mean, it's not skeptical. It's like I read it, and it's really more of like doing it and trying it. But I don't have any kids. I just have my one client. That when I read this, I'm like, I already know who I'm going to give, work with this on, because I have tried meditating with her. I was lucky that I could get her to breathe deep.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe something like this will be more interactive and, a little more motion involved versus sitting quiet. Because I think that's an issue that kids have now too, is the whole sitting quiet for 5 minutes. They don't know how to do it.
Let me give you a couple of suggestions with that issue. Sitting quiet and breathing is really radically against every kid's nature, So you could do a couple things, and this isn't part of the Indigo thing. This is just my working with kids for decades. Number one, if you have access to a swimming pool, you could put a snorkel mask on the child, because what happens is, anybody who's ever been snorkeling knows that you hear your own breath. When you're breathing in the snorkel mask, you hear your own breath. So all of a sudden the child is hearing his or her own breath. Then the next thing that you can do is, instead of saying breathe, there's a little chant that I have that goes, breathing, 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 breathing. And so instead of just telling a child to breathe, you tell a child to sing this song and to hear his or her own breath the same way he heard his or her own breath in the snorkel. Or if you can't get to the snorkel, you can do the breathing as well. And there's such power, such healing power in music that it often works where just simple words won't.
Good idea. See, there was a reason why we're talking.
I thought the reason we're talking is because you love me and you love this idea. I thought that was the reason.
That too. Well, working with kids is just a whole very different thing than working with an adult.
You just never know. So one kid comes in here, and I've seen it happen over and over again. The mother bribes the kid to play the games. So, usual bribe is we can go to McDonald's, we can go for a pizza afterwards. One time, this really sweet little Jewish kid came in, and the mother says to him, if you play the games with Rabbi Wayne, she called me Rabbi because the kid's Jewish and she wanted to be respectful. If you play the games with Rabbi Wayne, we can go to the Zen Buddhist store afterwards, and you can get something. So I said to this woman, quietly, You're a nice Jewish woman. Why are you taking the kid to the Zen Buddhist store? She said, his whole room is filled with Buddhist stuff. He relates to the Buddha. So obviously it's a past life that this child had. And that's what got him to play the games. He would go get a reward. He'd get a new present at the Buddhist store. Okay, fantastic. There are sometimes that people come in and I interview them and I say, this isn't for you. I had about a 14-year-old boy who his grandparents were bringing him up. His parents were out of the picture. His grandparents were bringing him up. His grandparents were immigrants. They didn't speak English very well. And the whole issue with them was, could he play football in junior varsity or whatever it is? And the grandparents were very afraid of it. You know, there's reason to be afraid of letting kids play football with all the head injuries. But they didn't understand why it was so important to him, because that's how he was going to assert his growing adolescent manhood with his buddies at school. And because he wasn't allowed to play, he was like, made into the sissy of the class. Once I understood that, he didn't need indigo healing. He just needed to go be able to play football.
See, that I can deal with. It's that breathing part, So we had a question in the chat room, and actually this came in quite a while ago, so we're kind of backing up the conversation. But
chat room person.
It was Lorraine. It was
Hi,
Lorraine in the chat room. Hopefully she's still there. But her question was when we were talking about the drugs, but we had moved on to a different topic. But the question was, how do these drugs affect a kid's metabolism? It's like the antidepressants and stuff like that.
Well, look, a couple things. First of all, sometimes drugs are good. I don't want to dismiss drugs entirely. Sometimes there are chemical imbalances in the brain, and drugs can be very, very helpful. Otherwise, drugs affect the child's metabolism basically in the same way they affect an adult metabolism. Sometimes it makes somebody ravenously hungry. Remember the munchies in your youth, Rita? Or
never.
Or sometimes it makes a person not hungry at all, and it's not so good. The real question is, what does the drug do in terms of a child's behavior? And what it does is it suppresses a child's natural behaviors, and the teachers and the parents feel good because we're drug controlling, we're drug managing the kids. It's just the opposite of what we want. What we want is the kids to come into the fullness of their indigo-ness, because in their indigo-ness, with their creativity and their innovation and their energy and their wisdom and their wise beyond their years, they're going to show us how things go. I was at a synagogue in north of San Francisco last week, Marin County, and they brought in the 15-year-olds to listen to my talk about the real name of God. Many of the adults were fairly skeptical because, after all, I'm challenging old and comfortable, long-held beliefs, right? The kids, one girl stands up and says, "I have something to say." And I thought, here I am in trouble. And she said, "Thank you very much, because I've never understood God my whole life. I finally understand God." Well, the kid got it, because the kid was with God more recently than we were. One kid walked in here into my office and said, "You're a rabbi, right?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You believe those Bible stories?" I said, "Well, I didn't want to get into a discussion about higher biblical criticism with this child, so I said yes." He said, "Then you're a fool." His mother said, "Don't speak to him that way." The kid said, "Yeah, but all the stories aren't right. This story is only half of a story, and the second half of this story goes with the first half of this one, and the first half of this one goes with the second half of this one." And I said to him, "How do you know all this?" He just pointed his thumb upward. I said, "What does that mean?" He said, "Hey, I just came from there. These were my bedtime stories. I know them better than you do." The kids are warm from being with God.
That's pretty amazing. I mean, the part that gets me, one of the things that I believe is that the things that we see on TV is the the programming that we're giving our children. I remember growing up and it was, Star Trek and stuff like that. So, now we all have communicators and, they have laser technology and many of the things that they talked about on Star Trek, except transporters. And I'm still waiting for the transporter.
We need them. You have to be able to take your luggage too.
Well, they could do that. They just put it on a different platform thing. It was all good.
It shows how young you are. When I was growing up, it was Howdy Doody and Kukla, Fran, and Ollie.
No. Those were dork. But anyway.
Hey, that's my childhood, kiddo.
But it presented a future, a positive outlook on the future. Now you watch these shows and everybody's standing around a garbage can that's got a fire in it, and dying or blowing up the world. And I just think it's such a dichotomy that we have these indigo children coming in that are just open and connected to source. What are they going to do with it?
They are going to be the paradigm shifters. They are going to say to us, you fools for not listening and not watching. And when we are in enough pain and have brought enough guns to school and killed our classmates and made our playgrounds into killing fields, you will finally get it. And you will say, how can we help these children come into the fullness of their beings, and how can we follow them into the fullness of their beings? That's where we are right now. That's really where we are right now. We have come to the place in this world, and you're so right. Your childhood and mine before yours were much easier, much more delightful than these kids have to go through. And even the things that we saw on television then were not as terrible as the things that the kids see on television now. But we have come to the point where either we will learn to live together and survive, or we will continue to fight with each other and we will destroy each other and perish. That's where we've come. This is no longer a world where this army can fight with that army and somebody 500 miles away never heard about it. The whole world is linked. It's a trite to say, but it's a tiny little village. And this is why one of the lessons of my book, The Real Name of God, is that this notion that's going on in the world right now that my God's better than your God, and if you don't believe me, I will force you to believe me because I'm a fundamentalist.
That's my line.
Yeah, what we're really learning is that there is one God, that God has one name. You can call God whatever you want, but the three Abrahamic source religions now know that God has one name, and she is one God who loves us all, who loves all children equally, who doesn't play favorites, and God says to us, I love you, you love me, and now you better learn to love each other or you will destroy each other. God promised that God would never destroy the world again. That's what the rainbow's about after the Noah flood. But God didn't promise that we, in our foolishness, won't destroy the world. And that's what we've come to. And our children have come to be right in our faces to tell us that that's the case.
Amen. Can I get an amen on that?
Amen.
Okay, so there was another question in the chat room, and then I have another question. And so this is from Rich. And I'm just going to read half the question because I think he knows the answer to the other half. So do you think the Dalai Lama was an indigo child? And that, because he selected the object owned by the previous Dalai Lama when he was a kid? I think
the Dalai Lama is one of those rare souls who is a master guide, a master teacher, a world luminary. We've seen a few in our generation, but when we talk about Moses and Abraham and Moses and Jesus and Muhammad and the people like in our generation Mother Teresa and the Dalai Lama, these are people who have come to teach the whole world through the goodness of their being and the great wisdom that far surpasses anything that we've known on earth at that point.
Good answer. a little earlier, and I'm looking at the clock. We have about 3 minutes. Okay, very quick. You mentioned about the gun violence in the school. Do you think that the children that have been perpetrating those malicious acts, do you think they were indigos too, that were just extremely wounded?
Absolutely. It's indigo pain taken to its nth degree. And that's how they lash out, and that's how they act out, because they're in such pain. That's all they know how to do. And you are so right. You're so right, Dr. Rita, when you talk about the parents' involvement, because, there was one of those cases, I forget, it was Colorado or one of them, where the kids collected a duffel bag full of guns in the garage, wore black trench coats all the time. They took these duffel bags into school, shut up their classmates and their teachers, and the parents said, "Oh, I have no idea. I had no idea my child was collecting a duffel bag full of guns in my own garage." Hello, lady? Mister? Where you been? Where you been in your child's life? So I have great admiration for the parents who bring their children for indigo healing or for any of the other kinds of healing that they are seeking, that they think work, because these parents are deeply involved in their children's lives and they want what's best for their children. And again, we can't afford to have a world where parents spend 11 and a half hours less each week with children than parents in the 1960s. And we have to do something to change that so that we don't have what we used to call latchkey kids, and we don't have kids who come home and are there alone for 2 and 3 hours a day and turn on the computer or play violent video games or talk in chat rooms that we have no idea about. We have a responsibility to our children to be deeply involved in their lives. And God bless the parents who bring their children for indigo healing or any other kind of healing that is going to help their children live in this world in a more comfortable way.
Well, we need to wrap up, and I just want to say this out loud, that in your book, we've been talking about these yumis, and all of that is in the book. And so it's not that people need to contact you to have a session, that it is a complete guide to helping your child.
Right. So the book is in paperback is called Empowering Your Indigo Child, a handbook for children of spirit, co-authored by my holy wife, Ellen Kaufman Dosick, published by Red Wheel Weiser, and it's available on Amazon, bookstores, Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, and we put it out so people could follow cookbook-like instructions to do the healing processes for their children.
Well, Rebbe, we need to go. So thank you so much for coming on. I'll see you next Wednesday. Woo-hoo!
Thank you. Wednesday at the Dallas JCC, 7 o'clock, The Real Name of God, Embracing the Full Essence of the Divine. I hope that everybody in the Dallas area will come. I'd love to meet you and share this revolutionary discovery with you.
All right. And I will talk to you later. All right?
Great.
Bye.
Thanks so much. And
You're welcome.
Dr. Rita, thanks for all that you are doing for the betterment and the greatness of this world. You are a great practitioner, and you bring wonderful, wonderful things to your listening audience. You are to be praised and blessed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Rebbe. All right, but I can't hear the music, and I'm just going to talk over myself, so go. Whoosh, whoosh, before a house falls on you or something. Bye.
Okay. Bye. I'm hanging up. Bye.
All right. Bye. That's Rabbi Wayne Dosick. His webpage is www.soulbysoul.com. His book, Empowering Your Indigo Child. Next week, we have Eva Hare and Tracy Brown, and it's our Valentine special. So till next week, I'm Dr. Rita Louise. Be blessed.
Join host Dr. Rita Louise each week at this time for Just Energy Radio. Point your browser